Good afternoon and welcome to Newsline. I'm Simon Hendel.
And I'm Sasha Hancock. Today, sugar tax revisited. The marriage equality debate comes to a head and the rise of co-working spaces. But first to local news with Thomas Carr. Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks, Ash. A deadly windstorm has swept across the state, claiming the life of a woman, injuring several others and leaving thousands without power. The winds peaked at 120 kilometres per hour and the State Emergency Service responded to more than 600 calls for assistance. Outspoken Senators Darren Hinch and Pauline Hanson have come head-to-head on Breakfast TV after the One Nation founder defended Donald Trump's crude comments about a female American news anchor. Australia's richest woman, Gina Rinehart, has reached an agreement to purchase one of the country's largest landholdings, Kidman & Co. The bid comes just months after Chinese buyers were knocked back on the basis of protecting national interest. Ms Rinehart has partnered with Chinese company Shanghai Cred, which will hold a third of the shares in the joint venture. And after sweeping across the United States, creepy clowns have come to Australia. The craze began with reports of clowns trying to lure children into woodland areas of South Carolina. With sightings reported across Melbourne, police have warned antisocial behaviour will be investigated. Thanks, Simon.
The Caulfield Racecourse, home of the iconic Caulfield Cup, has become the scene of a bitter local dispute as council and residents fight for more public space. Tyrone Kennedy reports.
It's a game rarely seen at the Caulfield Racecourse, an area the size of 15 MCGs, fenced in and hidden from the public. But that's about to change.
We've seen the letter was tabled last night at the council meeting from the minister asking for those trustees to resign, and not only do they have to resign, they also need to surrender the Crown grant.
The Crown land is the racecourse and the trustees control it. But there's been a problem.
That one of the trustees, who's the chair of the Melbourne Racing Club, is also a director of Aquanina Stables, and so he has three hats. We see it as an incredible conflict of interest.
Though originally slated for three very different uses, racing has been the prevailing force in the area. And with the least amount of open space in Melbourne, for Glen Ira's residents, it's a simple equation.
Three purposes, straight arithmetic. 67% should have been public, 33% should have been racing.
Kids playing sport on there. We can certainly have passive space. It's got two lakes there, one of which waters the fields, the other is for recreational purposes.
It's a debate as old as horse racing itself. In 1884, the then Minister for Land saw the potential for conflict, though he was a strong supporter in the public's right to access.
I guess in the context of 150 years of waiting, I can wait until mid-October.
Which is when the trustees will finalise their release. Melbourne Racing declined to comment. Tyrone Kennedy, Newsline.
There's renewed pressure from Liberal backbencher Russell Broadbent to reopen the controversial sugar tax debate. Mia Stiant-Brown reports.
With obesity rates rising around the world, some say a sugar tax could be the solution to this growing epidemic. The Greens supported a 20% tax on sugary beverages during this year's federal election. Liberal MP Russell Broadbent has reignited debate over the tax by once again bringing it to the Parliament floor.
The Australian Bureau of Statistics released data this year that revealed Australians were consuming around 60 grams of sugar, or roughly 14 teaspoons of white sugar every day. The data showed that teenage males aged 14 to 18 years consume the most sugar, on average around 92 grams or 18 teaspoons per day.
The Greens say every dollar raised will be reinvested into public health, preventative health, and health education. Food and activity advocacy group Parents' Voice would also like to see more money invested in these areas.
Most of the extra kilojoules that Australia's consuming are coming from junk food and soft drinks.
Opponents argue that it is regressive and that it is the responsibility of individuals, not government, to curb their sugar consumption. The Institute of Public Affairs agrees with these criticisms.
The tax would be very much a nanny state and paternalistic policy.
The Greens see government as having a role in finding a solution to the obesity problem.
Most people might say we shouldn't have laws for seatbelts or laws that say you can't use asbestos, or that the government shouldn't be restricting or interfering with tobacco consumption. At the end of the day, one of the things the government is charged with is looking after public health.
Mia Stiant-Brown, Newsline.
Hundreds of Muslim men in Australia are using a polygamist website to find second wives, which has some in the Australian Islamic community concerned. Hugo Hodge reports.
Polygamy. It's still one of Australia's biggest social taboos, but one website aimed at an Islamic audience is hoping to change that. Secondwife.com is a website founded in the UK and aims to set up Muslim men with prospective second wives. Website founder Izzad Chiawala said the site is gaining popularity in Australia, but Jamana El Matra, the executive director of the Australian Muslim Women's Council for Human Rights, says secondwife.com is un-Islamic.
I think that it basically is trying to promote a practice that has been broadly rejected by Muslims for well over a century. It presents the practice as, an uncomplicated sort of arrangement between people, and we know that that's not the reality at all.
Polygamy is illegal in Australia and punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The president of the Australian Federation of Islamic Councils, Kaysar Chad, says polygamy offers women rights. But Dr. Shakira Hussain from the National Centre for Excellence in Islamic Studies at the University of Melbourne rejects this.
In some parts of the Muslim world, women and girls still face that kind of isolation and that need for a male protector, but that isn't the case in contemporary Australia.
Hugo Hodge, NEWSLINE.
A new scholarship is aiming to clean up the renewables energy sector image when it comes to female representation in the workforce. Anthea Batsakis reports.
The clean energy sector may be booming, but it's still behind when it comes to gender diversity. The Clean Energy Council aims to close this gender gap with an annual scholarship for women only, called Developing Women Directors, and they're calling for applicants now. The scholarship will equip the winning applicant with the skills they need to be a board member, as less than 18% of women in the electricity industry have roles in planning, directing and controlling business activities.
There are a number of qualified women who, for whatever reason, don't have the confidence to put themselves forward.
But it's not just confidence and experience that's the problem. With such a small representation of women in senior management positions, women looking for a promotion don't have industry role models. The scholarship winner will be funded to complete the Australian Institute of Company Directors Foundation of Directorship course. One woman making waves in renewable energy is the National Manager of Pollinate Energy, Manita Ray. Pollinate Energy develops solar lamps to light up the slums in India and replace toxic kerosene lamps. She says a stigma against working mothers make them doubt their working capabilities.
Like for my daughter, I don't ever want her to ever question if and when she has children, whether she should go back to work or not, or whether she should get to a higher position.
Manita says the Clean Energy Council scholarship will give women an extra set of skills and an added incentive to apply for board member positions.
In general, I find men don't doubt their abilities and they'll tend to apply for positions beyond their capabilities, and they're okay with that.
Anthea Batsakis, NEWSLINE.
If you're watching on TV, stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break. But if you're joining us online, don't go anywhere. There's more great coverage up now. You're watching NEWSLINE.
This is Alex Jones for NEWSLINE. I'm here at Federation Square, the location for the new exhibition of the world's most secretive and infamous artist, Banksy. The exhibition will host up to 80 of his most famous and iconic pieces of artwork, including the girl with the balloon. It is, however, an unofficial show put together by his ex-manager, so it does not have the official Banksy seal of approval. But this is not stopping fans from flocking to see the show. This is Alex Jones for NEWSLINE.
Hi, this is Annalena Janssen for NEWSLINE. I'm here in Melbourne at Docklands for the Women World Changer Summit that's happening here today. There's a range of experts discussing issues around gender equality and diversity. One of the main issues that's come up throughout the day is the gender pay gap. It's still almost 30% for ASX listed companies, with less than 25% of director positions staffed by women. The event is hosted by Melbourne's very own Waleed Ali, and attendees are hoping to raise awareness around the problem of gender equality in workplaces. Annalena Janssen, NEWSLINE.
In the lead up to the local election here in Darebin, the Greens party are once again being criticised for their system of voting preferences. The precinct, which runs from Northcote up to Bundoora, has 9 Greens candidates, 5 of which are asking to not be voted in. Instead, they're asking for other Greens candidates to be put ahead of themselves on the ballot paper. Tom Hannon is one candidate who is asking to be put third, saying the party operates as a whole, not a system of individualists. However, ex-candidate Brian Sanahan is making a complaint to the Victorian Electoral Commission. Rachel Robertson, Newsline.
This is Sarah Vannon from Newsline, and I'm standing here at Federation Square, where hundreds are expected to flock to see a performance called Collisions, an Indigenous Australian story that's playing at the moment as part of the Melbourne Festival. Now, it's the 4th day of the festival, and crowds are expected to be here until night time. Laneways and side streets have been transformed into worlds of music, wonder and food. Now, the festival doesn't end until October 23rd, so there's still plenty of time to see what it has to offer, and it's one not to be missed. This is Sarah Vannon from Newsline.
Welcome back to Newsline. You're here with Sasha Hancock and Simon Hendel. Now let's take a look at what's making news around the world with Tamsin Rose. Thanks, Tamsin.
Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have fielded sticky questions in St. Louis at the second US presidential debate. Trump's personal attacks against Clinton included a pre-debate press conference with a woman who accused Bill Clinton of sexual abuse. The Republican Party is in crisis after a 2005 video recording was released documenting candidate Donald Trump making lewd comments about women. Many senior GOP members are distancing themselves from the billionaire businessman, but Trump and running mate Mike Pence have vowed they will not drop out of the race. The Chinese government has sentenced the former Communist Party boss Bai Pei to death for bribery as part of President Xi Jinping's unrelenting war on graft. A court said Pei abused his positions and illegally collected more than $49 million in assets. Thousands of people have been rescued from their homes in North Carolina as Hurricane Matthew batters America's east coast. The powerful hurricane killed more than 800 people in Haiti last week. And the US is reconsidering its support of the Saudi-led coalition's war in Yemen after a deadly airstrike on a funeral over the weekend killed 140 people. Back to you, Sasha.
With domestic violence cases on the rise, one woman, with the help of her local community, is campaigning to stop these numbers increasing. Alex Mitchell reports.
What started as a personal act to take a stand against violence, the 1 Million Stars to End Violence project is spreading across the nation. So moved by Jill Maher's tragic murder, Brunswick woman Marianne Powell took the response into her own hands.
I put it out on Facebook. I said, hey everybody, join me and let's weave 1 million stars. Let's make these stars symbols of light and of courage and of solidarity to end all forms of violence.
Ms Powell's goal of weaving 1 million stars has been taken up by community groups, including in America and Europe.
Here at the Faulkner Community Centre, the weavers have lost count of how many stars they've made, but they guess it's way over 1,000.
The campaign has brought the group together, giving them a chance to reflect on their own experiences of violence, with an eye towards changing the future.
I'm a survivor of domestic violence as a child, and this has been wonderful for me.
If this helps just one lady to get out of that without being hurt, that would be wonderful.
Aboriginal Housing Victoria project manager Jo Thitchener says her group decided to weave their stars in the colours of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags.
It's just a way of sort of having conversations, informing, educating, raising awareness, saying it's okay to ask for help.
The stars represent courage, hope and peace and will be on display on the Gold Coast for the opening ceremony of the 2018 Commonwealth Games. Alex Mitchell, Newsline.
Meditation lounges, gyms, free beer 24/7. All these may be the norm in offices of the future as more co-working spaces appear across Melbourne. Brian Allen reports.
On the outside, they can look like old warehouses or factories, but on the inside, fingers are tapping away. Co-working spaces are where startups, freelancers, entrepreneurs and small businesses work in the same space. Hub Southern Cross opens on October 3rd. It's the biggest co-working space in Melbourne yet.
It's super exciting to be able to take our 5 years of experience and learnings and just that feedback from members to be able to create Hub Southern Cross.
Located here at the historic Mail Exchange building, it's got a gym, pet-friendly policy and will service up to 500 people.
CEO and founder of Hub Australia, Brad Krauskopf, said co-working spaces are being used differently to when Hub Australia opened their first co-working space in 2011.
Certainly as co-working's evolved, it's moved from not being just for freelancers, but being for those growing businesses.
According to Knight Frank research, there's been a 750% increase in the number of co-working spaces in Melbourne since 2013. Knight Frank senior analyst Kimberly Patterson said affordability is one reason for this.
And affordability, office rents in Melbourne are considerably cheaper than what they are in Sydney, and I think that's really attractive to startups and also co-working providers.
The co-working trend continues. Brian Allen, NEWSLINE.
The Melbourne Festival is well and truly underway, with one of the city's best burgers now on show. But how important is it for consumers to know where their beef comes from? Isabella Stashkovsky reports.
The burger trend is infiltrating the Melbourne Festival. But have you ever wondered where your burger comes from? Organisation Sustainable Table says Australians eat roughly their own weight in meat per year. Winner of Time Out's favourite burger award, Arbery Bar and Eatery, will be flipping burgers for the upcoming festival.
It'll be good. It's such a great festival. So we get all of our meat through JBS and they're all farm assured, hormone-free cattle.
The 6-step cradle-to-grave meat life cycle is something that all consumers should be aware of, according to Environmental Working Group's Meat Eaters Guide.
Many of us indulge in takeaway or restaurant food sometimes, but how many of us are actually concerned with the production process before it hits our plate?
I don't really think about where the meat comes from, no. I just order my burger and go from there, yeah.
It's cow and it's from somewhere. I am really concerned about where my beef comes from and I try to look for very good organic beef.
Occasionally, but that's life, isn't it?
The processing goes from, I guess, from the farm to an abattoir to a local butcher and who minces our beef for us.
The burger trend is here to stay in Melbourne. Let's not get beefy about it. Isabella Stashkovsky, NEWSLINE.
The global fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the world after oil, and Australia's is one of the dirtiest. Amy Campbell reports.
When it comes to retail therapy, Melbourne is spoilt for choice. From bargain buys to luxury investments, there's a shop for everyone and everything. Statistics show that we're buying more clothes than ever before.
Consumers are having a real significant impact on both the environment and the people working in the industry, particularly just sheer volume, the way that we're over-consuming and buying more than we need.
Located in the suburb of Brunswick is a consignment store called Recycle Boutique. Here, anyone can drop off their second-hand clothes, which the boutique then sells on behalf of customers. Manager Monique Thomas says the store is teaching the community how to shop more sustainably.
When people bring in those fast fashion garments and we're unable to accept them, we try to gently let them know why and hope that it sparks some sort of thought to the way that they consume.
By giving customers an alternative to buying brand new clothing, consignment stores are working to undo some of the environmental damage caused by the industry.
Some customers have said to me they wouldn't have ever shopped in an op shop or shopped secondhand before, so it's hopefully changing the way that people think about shopping secondhand.
The growing popularity of consignment stores in Melbourne marks a shift in attitude for the fashion community, bringing the city one step closer to becoming a more sustainable shopping destination. Amy Campbell, NEWSLINE.
As the push for marriage equality in Australia continues, there is growing support for adopting a civil union scheme like the French system. Imogen Bazideau reports.
The same-sex marriage debate rages on. Is it time for Australia to consider adopting a civil union scheme as a viable alternative? France resolved its same-sex marriage debate by creating civil unions to offer legal protection for same-sex couples. Popularity has since caught on, with more and more same-sex couples and heterosexuals alike now favouring the legal partnership over traditional marriage ceremonies. But some family law experts argue that Australia's legislation already offers same-sex couples equal legal standing to that of married couples.
In France, they don't have a family law act like we have, and they don't have the benefit of the jurisdiction that the family court has over all relationships.
But for those individuals directly affected, the current laws governing same-sex de facto relationships feel discriminatory and inadequate.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, I've gone through that phase of my life where a lot of my friends who've been together with their partners for a long time have all got married, and it's a constant reminder of something that you could never have.
Ian Mawson is not convinced that standardised civil unions are the way forward for Australia.
The LGBT community wouldn't want to have a lesser option.
Imogen Bazideau, Newsline.
After the break, we'll be joined by Tim Peppard from Australian Marriage Equality with an exclusive live interview, so be sure to stay tuned. But if you're watching online, stick around for more content during the break. This is Newsline.
I'm Michael Zabrecki from Newsline. We're outside the Melbourne Stock Exchange today where the Aussie dollar is trading higher ahead of the second US presidential debate. The US dollar has slipped in the lead up to the debate after figures showed that job growth had slowed for the third consecutive month while unemployment rates rose. The Australian dollar is trading at a 3-year high against the British pound after the pound suddenly dropped 6%. The pound has traded miserably this year following Britain's unexpected vote to leave the EU back in June. Michael Zabrecki, Newsline.
I'm Josh Harris for Newsline here in Melbourne. It's something which users of Melbourne roads have known for some time. Traffic congestion is getting worse. But until now, the evidence for this has been largely anecdotal. Now, there's objective data to back it up. Journey times from 1,400 Uber drivers have been analysed across Australia. The analysis showed that Melbourne's traffic has gotten worse by more than any of the other cities. Today, as Melbourne recovers from fierce storms and strong winds, there's been traffic chaos across the city. Of course, there are major plans in the works to improve congestion on Melbourne's road. Dan Andrews' government is pushing ahead with Melbourne Metro and seeking to get rid of level crossings. But as these changes will likely make things worse before they get better, commuters will have to exercise some patience. Josh Harris, Newsline.
Hi, I'm John Nelder for Newsline, and I'm here at Etihad Stadium today. Now, footy fans will be eyeing off the start of the AFL trade period today. And out at Collingwood, they'll be one-eyed as ever. Pies fans might just see two of their favourite sons lining up for the black and white. Club legends Peter Dacos and Gavin Brown each have a son up for nomination under the father-son rule. Now, while Dacos' son Josh is said to be just as silky as his old man, Gavin Brown's son Callum is said to be just as hard at the ball as his old man. Now, we won't know for sure whether they'll be nominated until draft day come November. But until then, Pies fans will be hoping the apple won't fall too far from the tree. John Nelder for Newsline.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline with Simon Hendel and Sasha Hancock. Today in Parliament, the possible plebiscite on marriage equality will be debated leading up to tomorrow's vote on the issue. Now to Sally Scott, who's joined by Tim Peppard, spokesman for Australian Marriage Equality.
Thanks, Simon. So, Tim Peppard, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
So the Labor caucus is going to make a decision tomorrow in relation to the plebiscite. Your organisation is not in favour of the plebiscite. Can you tell us the main reasons for that?
Australian Marriage Equality is not happy with the plebiscite because it's non-binding. It will waste $200 million of the taxpayers' money. It will fund $7.5 million towards an campaign which will promote hate and a lot of emotional distress to LGBT people and their children. Also, too, it's a waste of the legislators' time. We promote a free vote by the MPs in Parliament on the issue.
Right, so given that, I understand that. What if we end up with a stalemate? So we've got the government supporting the plebiscite, we're left with the opposition against the plebiscite, but that could leave us in a position where we might not get marriage equality until we see a new government, which could be years away.
Well,
aren't you then in a position where you might need to support the plebiscite in order to see marriage equality in the short term, rather than in say 4, 8, 16 years away when we see a new government?
Sally, we don't. The Attorney General and the Prime Minister are pushing the false line that if the GLBTI community and the broader community doesn't accept and the Labor Party doesn't accept a plebiscite in the harsh terms that they've drafted it, then there'll be no marriage equality won't be achieved until a change in government. We don't believe that. The government only had a mandate of 1 seat, and that is not sufficient to delay the inevitable move towards marriage equality.
But if it is in fact a position where you've got a stalemate, and it's either a plebiscite or a change in government, isn't the situation then you really do need to support the plebiscite?
No, the plebiscite's dead and buried. The plebiscite will be blocked by Labor, the Greens and the Xenophon team and other independents in the Senate when it reaches the Senate. It won't go any further. So then we will be promoting a free vote in Parliament. The majority of Australian citizens prefer this issue of marriage equality to be decided by a free vote in Parliament.
Right.
The government changed its mind on superannuation. It can change its mind on this.
Okay, terrific. Thanks a lot, Tim Peppard.
My pleasure,
and
thank you.
Back to you in the studio.
Now for sport with David Henning. Tell us, David, what's been happening in the world of sport?
Thanks, Sasha. Well, retired Collingwood star Dane Swan has revealed that despite taking recreational drugs during his career, he never failed an AFL drug test. He makes the revelations in an upcoming book where he also says that he and a number of other players didn't want Premiership coach Mick Malthouse to leave. More bad news for Australia's cricketers in South Africa, falling to their 4th straight defeat in the one-day series. Chasing just 168, the hosts cruised to a 6-wicket victory. Australia's #1 tennis player Nick Kyrgios has won the Japan Open, coming from a set down to defeat Belgian David Goffin for his 3rd career title. Holden's Will Davidson is the king of the mountain after he won the Bathurst 1000 at Mount Panorama last night. The first moves of the AFL trade period are underway, with Richmond big man Tyrone Vickery set to become a Hawk and Kangaroos veteran Daniel Wells expected to join Collingwood. And Australia's netballers have won the opening match of the Constellation Cup after defeating New Zealand 68-56 in Sydney. And back to you, Simon.
Thanks, David. Here's a look at the weather with Mindy Gill.
Thanks, guys. Behind me here is a glimpse of Melbourne cityscape, and the weather for now has brightened a touch after damaging windstorms yesterday left thousands without power. Strong winds and chance of hail and thunderstorms later today with a top of 17. Tomorrow is partly cloudy with a high chance of morning and afternoon showers, maximum 15 degrees. A high chance of rain in the morning and afternoon on Wednesday with a top of 15. And finally on Thursday, we can catch a glimpse of sunshine peeking through the clouds with light breezy winds and a top of 16. That's the 4-day forecast. Back to you.
Thank you, Mindy. This has been Newsline for Monday the 10th of October with Sasha Hancock.
And Simon Hendel. Thanks for joining us and have a great week.
20 years.
I can't believe it, Only 20, God, he's
I can't bloody believe it.
got maturity and...
Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Hey, Tabu.
Yes.
Remember where Michael went?
Michael, you think we're trying to